Line Entertainment. It is Marvin speaking. I hope everyone's having a brilliant Sunday. I just wanted to go over a few things. I'm just going back through a few articles, basically on the Jay Slater case, and there's a couple of things that just hadn't really made sense to me. And I'm just going to read this little article, and it's from the Independent about just over a week ago. And it said, Coroner Dr. James Adley asked the witness, did you get the impression he was in any way threatened or fearful or under duress in a difficult situation? Question mark. Brad replied, no, I think he probably got there, thought, why am I here? Sobered up and decided to come back. We've got to remember is at the end of the day, are you going to really go walking for that long in the wilderness, not knowing where you're going, scaling cliffs, and ended up in the ravine? It never really made sense to me, just that line itself at the end of the day, where we know some of his family said he doesn't even like walking up the road to the barber's, which is less than a couple of minutes away from his house. So that tells you everything. It's really, really strange that is at the end of the day. And really, if you've been partying for 3 nights going mental, previous nights, because we know we got there a couple of days before the NRG festival started. And it's really, really bizarre to me in that when you hear that line, he sobered up. So what condition was he in? It just doesn't make sense to me. And I think there's going to be a lot of comments just on that line alone from Brad. Another friend, Lucy Law, called him around 8:30am and sent him a message saying, go back to where you effing come from, just came from before it gets boiling. That's a point where I think Lucy had been up to Masca before, and I just think she knew the area well. And technically, she's just basically saying she looked at the picture and realised, oh, it could be somewhere in Masca, when she said, took a lift. Well, put a name on Facebook that she's actually looking for someone. Someone came forward, and this woman gave her a lift up there. But this obviously woman didn't come forward to actually elaborate on that when she was actually called due to people, sleuths emailing her. She never said a word. And apparently, in the early days, I heard that she did make a statement, but retracted it. So Lucy said on the call, she asked him, what on earth are you doing? Where are you? He was just, I'm in the middle. He was just, I'm in the middle of the mountains. She asked him what he could see, and he replied, nothing, literally nothing. There's literally just mountains. Mr. Slater also said he needed a drink and asked if cactus are poisonous. Miss Law added, by this stage, I'm panicking. Another friend, Brandon, in his statement, Spanish police and Mr. Slater contacted him on a video around 8:30am, showing him surrounded by mountains with his phone battery down to 3%. And obviously we were told 1%, but that's still low, 3%. Mr. Hodgson said his friend was laughing and joking and got the impression he was out of his mind. But when you're saying this, wouldn't you tell him to go back to the path, or ask him what they tried to, this pin location? It seems like they did say they had it, but wouldn't you go out and get him? And that was the first thing that actually Debbie said, which actually didn't make sense to me. It's actually cringing when you go back through these statements. He told police Jay was mentally very childlike, and so he called Miss Law so he could call him to solve the problem. I mean, it seems to me they had time to think about what they were going to say this time. Whether writing statements to the police. It sounds like to me the group of them got together and thought, this is it. I think this is enough to get us out of the trouble we could be in. Excerpts from information from Spanish authorities was read out by the coroner. Dr. James Adil included excerpts from the local mountain rescue services. So this also tells me that a lot of the stuff we were really, really concerned about, the Guardiansville had no concerns in foul play or any third party involved in this case, which is fair enough. So I always thought then we were probably fighting a losing battle, but I was always hoping that Debbie Warren would actually fight on, to be honest with you. And so that was basically some of the article from the Independent, which made me think, this case is more bizarre when you read it back and you're taking in for where I've, sort of not forgot about the case, because I think it's a really sort of mental, exhausting case as well, what happened to Jay. But all we wanted was justice for him and the truth. And I think people have said to me that they think that there's a lot of injustice in the Jay Slater case. The problem we have is that these people are still out there and they could do this to someone else, and we just have to still keep putting messages out there. I do think Debbie obviously going to Tenerife, basically, and I think it was probably to do some filming for the documentary, which, again, I think, people have, I understand why she's doing it at the end of the day, but people would have a lot of questions that everything was pre-planned, and what the coroner was going to, verdict was going to be, I think, because Debbie had said, obviously previous to that she is deeming it as an accident at the end of the day. She's okay to accept that. But obviously, we as the public had a lot more questions. I think the Aberdeen trip was true. I do believe that now. And I do believe that what about obviously, the rest of his body parts, repatriation? We haven't heard a thing about that, which is quite bizarre. Because, like I said, obviously Debbie mentions it in the early days, but we haven't heard anything since. And I still think there are a lot of massive, major questions. Maybe we will do one or two things in the documentary, and that's what they're waiting for. Or maybe we won't, which is quite bizarre. And I do think people feel a bit aggrieved and upset that obviously Debbie didn't take it a little bit any further. Maybe she couldn't because obviously the reports, but we'll have to see what happens at a later time. But I think these are massive. Just reading obviously the statements from the Independent, these are massive red flags. They really, really are. And one thing I noticed, which is really dreadful, I think, is that the amount of times that Jay was blamed for being drunk and stupid and childlike, it just seems like, to me, it's passing the buck. Let me know what you think, people. Don't forget to subscribe to Streamline Entertainment. And like I said, we'll continue to touch on this case and talk about the documentaries in the future. Thank you.